I thought I knew what happiness looked like. At 28, married to my college sweetheart David, and 5 months pregnant with our first baby life, felt perfect. My sister-in-law Stephanie had been incredibly supportive throughout my pregnancy, constantly checking on me and buying adorable outfits for our little one. I felt so grateful to have such a caring family member by my side during this special time. Little did I know that beneath her loving facade lurked a woman whose desperation would turn my peaceful pregnancy into an absolute nightmare that would change our lives forever. Before I tell you about the nightmare that unfolded, I would love to connect with all of you. Drop a comment letting me know where you are watching from, and do not forget to hit that like button and subscribe. What happened next will completely shock you. My pregnancy had been textbook perfect up until that point. David worked as a software engineer at a tech company downtown, while I managed social media campaigns for a boutique marketing firm. We had been trying to conceive for 2 years, so when those two pink lines appeared, we were over the moon. David's sister Stephanie seemed almost as excited as we were, which meant the world to me since my own family lived across the country in Oregon. Stephanie was 32 and had been married to her husband Mark for 8 years. I knew they had been struggling with infertility, which made her enthusiasm about our baby even more touching. She would stop by our house at least twice a week, always carrying a small gift or something she thought would be useful. Baby socks, tiny stuffed animals, pregnancy books, herbal teas that were supposed to help with morning sickness. Her generosity knew no bounds, and I often told David how lucky I felt to have such a wonderful sister-in-law. The Tuesday that everything changed started like any other. I had just finished a client presentation when my phone rang around 2:30 in the afternoon. The number was local but unfamiliar. Thinking it might be related to work, I answered professionally. "Hello, is this Sierra Martinez?" The woman's voice was crisp and official with an undertone that immediately put me on edge. "Yes, this is Sierra. How can I help you?" "My name is Amanda Richardson from the Department of Child and Family Services. I am calling because we have received a report regarding substance abuse during your current pregnancy." The words hit me like a physical blow. My hand instinctively moved to my belly as my heart started racing. "I am sorry, there must be some mistake." "Mrs. Martinez, we take these reports very seriously. According to our information, you have been using illegal substances that could harm your unborn child. We will need to schedule an immediate investigation." "This is absolutely insane," I said, my voice shaking. "I have never used drugs in my life. I do not even drink coffee anymore because of the pregnancy. Who would say something like this? I cannot disclose the source of the report, but I can tell you that we have credible evidence. If these allegations are substantiated, we will be prepared to remove the child immediately upon birth." My legs gave out and I sank into my desk chair. "You cannot be serious. This has to be some kind of joke." "This is no joke, Mrs. Martinez. We will be in touch within the next few days to arrange a home visit and drug testing. I suggest you prepare yourself accordingly." The line went dead. I sat there staring at my phone, my hands trembling violently. This could not be happening. David and I had been so careful, so responsible. We had read every pregnancy book, attended every doctor's appointment, followed every guideline to the letter. I immediately called David, barely able to get the words out between sobs. "Slow down, honey," David said when he answered. "What happened?" "Someone from Child Services just called. They think I am using drugs. David, they said they might take our baby." "What? That is completely ridiculous. I am coming home right now." 20 minutes later, David burst through our front door and found me curled up on the couch, still crying. He sat beside me and pulled me into his arms as I recounted the entire conversation word for word. "This has to be a mistake," he said, but I could hear the worry in his voice. "Let me call them back." We tried the number 3 times, but it went straight to a generic voicemail that did not identify any specific agency. David immediately looked up the official number for our county's Department of Child and Family Services and called them directly. "No," the receptionist told him after checking their system. We have no open cases or pending investigations for anyone by that name. Are you sure the caller identified themselves as being from our office? When David hung up and told me what they had said, I felt a mixture of relief and confusion. If it was not really child services, then who had called me? And why would someone want to terrify a pregnant woman like this? That evening, Stephanie came by with dinner from my favorite Thai restaurant. She could immediately tell something was wrong and insisted I tell her what had happened. When I finished explaining about the mysterious phone call, her face was filled with concern and indignation. "That is absolutely horrible," she said, rubbing my shoulder. "Who would do such a cruel thing? You have been such a perfect expectant mother. I cannot imagine anyone more dedicated to their baby's health than you." Her words were comforting, but I still felt unsettled. Someone out there had my phone number and enough information about my pregnancy to make that call seem legitimate. The thought that someone might be watching me or gathering information about my personal life was terrifying. I hoped the phone call had been a one-time thing, maybe a prank or a case of mistaken identity. But a week later, Amanda Richardson called again. This time, her voice was even more threatening, and the details she knew about my life made my blood run cold. "Mrs. Martinez, I am calling to follow up on our investigation. I see that you work at Creative Solutions Marketing on 5th Street. Is that correct?" "How do you know where I work?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Mrs. Martinez, we conduct thorough background checks on all subjects of our investigations. I also see that you have been frequenting the Whole Foods on Madison Avenue, typically on Tuesday evenings. Yesterday you purchased vanilla ice cream, organic strawberries, and prenatal vitamins. Is this accurate?" My phone nearly slipped from my shaking hands. Someone had definitely been watching me. Those details were absolutely correct, down to the specific flavor of ice cream I had bought. "Who is this really? What do you want from me?" "Mrs. Martinez, I am going to be completely honest with you. We have photographic evidence of your substance use. We also have witnesses who can testify to your erratic behavior and mood swings. If you cooperate with our investigation, things will go much easier for you." "This is harassment," I managed to say. "I am going to report this to the real child services and the police." "Go ahead," Amanda said with a laugh that chilled me to the bone. "But I should warn you that making false reports about government officials is a federal crime. We will be watching you closely, Mrs. Martinez. Every move you make, every place you go, every person you talk to. We will know about it." The line went dead again, leaving me alone with my racing heart and growing paranoia. I called David immediately, and he rushed home from work again. This time, we not only called the real DCFS, but also filed a report with the police. The officer who took our statement was sympathetic, but explained that without more concrete evidence, there was little they could do about harassing phone calls. "Change your phone number," he suggested, "and consider installing security cameras around your house. If someone is really stalking you, we need to document it." David took the officer's advice seriously. The next day, he had a security system installed and changed all the locks on our doors. But the calls continued. Amanda Richardson seemed to have an unlimited supply of phone numbers to call from, and her knowledge of my daily activities was becoming more and more detailed and disturbing. "I see you had an argument with your husband last Friday night around 10 p.m., she said during one particularly upsetting call. "Domestic disputes can affect our assessment of your fitness as a parent." The argument she was referring to had indeed happened, but it had been a minor disagreement about baby names that lasted maybe 5 minutes. The fact that she knew about it meant someone had been close enough to our house to overhear us talking in our own living room. I began to feel like I was losing my mind. Every time I left the house, I looked over my shoulder. Every time the phone rang, my heart rate spiked. I stopped going out unless absolutely necessary, and even then David insisted on coming with me. My work was suffering, my sleep was non-existent, and I was constantly worried about the stress affecting my pregnancy. 2 weeks into this nightmare, Amanda called with information that made everything click into place. "Mrs. Martinez, I understand you recently changed the color scheme for the nursery from yellow to mint green. That is an interesting choice." I had only told one person about that decision. 3 days earlier, I had mentioned to Stephanie that David and I had decided to repaint the nursery because the yellow was too bright. We had settled on a soft mint green that would work for either a boy or a girl. A terrible suspicion began forming in my mind. To test my theory, I decided to plant false information and see if it came back to me through Amanda. When Stephanie called that evening to check on me, I casually mentioned that I had a doctor's appointment the next morning to check on some concerning test results. The appointment was completely made up. I had no doctor's appointment scheduled, and all my test results had been perfect. The next afternoon, Amanda called right on schedule. "Mrs. Martinez, I trust your doctor's appointment went well this morning. I hope those test results were not as concerning as you feared." My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the phone. There was only one person I had told about that fictional appointment. When I hung up, I immediately called David at work and told him about my suspicions. "That is impossible," he said. "Stephanie would never do something like this. She loves you. She loves our baby." "David, think about it. She is the only person who knew about the nursery colors. She is the only person I told about that fake appointment. And she always seems to show up right after these calls happen, like she is checking to see how upset I am." That evening, David called Stephanie while she was supposedly at home, and I listened on speakerphone. At the exact same time, my phone rang with a call from Amanda Richardson. The background noise on both calls was identical, including a dog barking that I recognized as Stephanie and Mark's golden retriever. We had found our culprit. The next morning, David and I drove to Stephanie's house unannounced. Mark had already left for work, and we found Stephanie in her kitchen still in her pajamas drinking coffee and scrolling through her phone. When she saw us through the window, her face went pale, but she quickly composed herself and opened the door with a bright smile. "What a wonderful surprise!" Come in, come in. I was just thinking about calling to check on you, Sierra. How are you feeling?" "We need to talk, Stephanie." David said, his voice cold in a way I had never heard before. "Of course," she said, leading us to the living room. "Is everything okay? You both look so serious." I sat down across from her and looked directly into her eyes. "The calls are going to stop, Stephanie. We know it is you." "What calls? I have no idea what you are talking about." But her voice was shaking, and she could not maintain eye contact. David pulled out his phone and showed her the voice-changing app he had downloaded. "We found the same app on your phone yesterday when you left it on our counter. We also know that you have been the only person I have shared certain information with, and that same information has been repeated back to Sierra during the harassment calls." Stephanie's carefully constructed facade began to crumble. Her hands were trembling and tears started forming in her eyes. "You do not understand. I never meant for it to go this far." "So you admit it," I said, feeling a mix of relief and betrayal. "You have been terrorizing me for weeks. Do you have any idea what you have put me through? The stress you have caused during my pregnancy. I know, and I am so sorry. But Sierra, you have to understand. You are still young. You can have other babies. Mark and I, we have been trying for 8 years. 8 years of doctors and treatments and disappointments. This might be our only chance." The pieces suddenly fell into place with horrifying clarity. "You want my baby," I whispered. "This whole thing was to try to get me to give you my baby." "Not give," Stephanie said quickly. "I thought maybe if you were scared enough about child services taking the baby anyway, you might consider letting us adopt him or her instead. We could provide such a good home. We have savings and a beautiful nursery already and so much love to give." David stood up abruptly. "Stephanie, what you have done is not just wrong, it is illegal. You have been impersonating a government official. You have been stalking my wife. You have been trying to manipulate us into giving up our child through fear and intimidation." "I researched everything," Stephanie continued as if she had not heard him. "I know exactly how child services operates. I made sure my story was believable. I thought if I could just make Sierra understand how serious the situation could be, she might see that our solution was the best option for everyone." "Your solution?" I could barely speak. "Stephanie, You have been threatening to take my baby since the day it is born. You have made me afraid to leave my own house. You have caused me so much stress that I was worried about miscarrying. I would never have let them actually take the baby, she insisted. I just needed you to believe it was a possibility. I even started the paperwork for a private adoption. I told Mark we were going to adopt a baby from a young mother who needed help. He does not know the baby would be yours. The level of deception and manipulation was staggering. Stephanie had been planning this elaborate psychological torture for months, all while pretending to be my loving, supportive sister-in-law. She had researched government procedures, created fake identities, and developed an entire fictional scenario designed to break down my mental health during one of the most vulnerable times in my life. "We are calling the police," David said, pulling out his phone. "David, please," Stephanie begged, dropping to her knees. "I am your sister. I raised you after Mom and Dad divorced. I love you more than anything in this world. Please do not do this to me. You should have thought about that before you decided to terrorize my pregnant wife." David replied, his finger already dialing 911. When the police arrived 20 minutes later, Stephanie was still crying and begging for forgiveness. She showed them the voice-changing app on her phone and admitted to making all the calls. The officers found detailed notes in her handwriting, documenting my daily routines, photocopies of adoption paperwork, and even photographs she had taken of me at the grocery store and other public places. As they handcuffed her and read her rights, Stephanie looked at me one last time. "I just wanted to be a mother," she whispered. "You will never understand what that feels like." But as I watched her being led away, my hand protectively covering my growing belly, I realized that I understood exactly what that felt like. The difference was that my desire to be a mother would never drive me to hurt another woman or try to steal her child. The legal proceedings moved quickly. Stephanie was charged with impersonating a government official, stalking, and criminal harassment. The evidence against her was overwhelming, including the voice-changing app, her detailed surveillance notes, and recorded confession she had made during the arrest. Her lawyer tried to argue that her actions were motivated by mental health issues related to infertility, but the prosecutor pointed out that her elaborate planning showed clear intent and premeditation. During the trial, more disturbing details emerged. Stephanie had been planning this scheme since the day David and I announced our pregnancy. She had spent weeks researching child services procedures, creating fake phone numbers through online services, and developing detailed backstories for her Amanda Richardson persona. She had even gone so far as to rent a post office box under a fake name where she planned to have official-looking documents delivered. The judge sentenced her to 18 months in prison, followed by 2 years of probation. I was granted a restraining order that prohibited her from coming within 500 feet of me, David, or our future child. The judge called her actions a calculated campaign of psychological terrorism against a pregnant woman, and noted that the stress she caused could have resulted in serious harm to both me and the baby. 3 months later, I gave birth to a healthy baby girl we named Luna. She was perfect in every way, with David's dark eyes and my stubborn chin. The delivery was smooth, and I felt an overwhelming sense of relief that she had arrived safely, despite all the stress I had endured during my pregnancy. We moved across town to a new house with better security and a fresh start, far from any memories of Stephanie's manipulation. For 15 months, our lives were peaceful. Luna was a happy, healthy baby who brought joy to every moment. David and I went to couples therapy to process the trauma of what had happened and to strengthen our relationship. I also attended individual counseling sessions to deal with the anxiety and trust issues that lingered long after Stephanie's arrest. Mark divorced Stephanie while she was in prison. He came to see us once before moving back to his hometown in Minnesota, apologizing profusely for what his ex-wife had done. He explained that he had no idea about her plans and was horrified when he learned the truth. "I thought we were going to adopt through a legitimate agency," he told us. "I never imagined she would do something like this to her own family." Stephanie was released after serving 15 months for good behavior. I tried not to think about it, but David made sure our security system was updated, and our restraining order was still active. We hoped that prison had given her time to reflect on her actions and seek the mental health treatment she clearly needed. 1 month after her release, I started noticing a familiar car parked at the end of our street. It was a blue Honda Civic that I recognized as belonging to one of Stephanie's friends. The first few times I saw it, I told myself it was just a coincidence. But when I mentioned it to David, he began paying attention too. Sure enough, the car appeared almost every day, always with a lone occupant who seemed to be watching our house. Our security cameras confirmed my worst fears. The footage showed Stephanie herself disguised with a wig and sunglasses sitting in the borrowed car and taking photographs of our house. She had been conducting surveillance for almost 2 weeks, documenting our daily routines just like she had during my pregnancy. On a Tuesday morning, while David was at work and I was home with Luna, the doorbell rang. When I looked through the peephole, I saw Stephanie standing on our front porch. She was no longer disguised, and she was holding a small wrapped gift. "Sierra," she called through the door. "Please, I just want to talk. I know you probably hate me, but I have changed. Prison helped me understand what I did wrong. I just want to see Luna once. Just once, and then I will leave you alone forever." My hands were shaking as I reached for my phone to call 911. I did not open the door or respond to her voice. I knew that any interaction would only encourage her to keep trying. "I can see her through the window," Stephanie continued, her voice growing more desperate. "She is so beautiful, Sierra. She looks just like David did when he was a baby. Please, I am still her aunt. I still love her. I brought her a present." The dispatcher answered on the second ring, and I whispered my address and explained that someone with a restraining order against me was on my property. They assured me that officers were on their way and advised me to stay inside and avoid any contact. Through the window, I watched Stephanie try to peer into our house. When she realized I was not going to answer the door, she walked around to the backyard and began looking through windows, calling Luna's name and trying to get her attention. The baby was napping in her crib upstairs, completely unaware of the danger lurking just outside. When the police arrived 6 minutes later, they found Stephanie attempting to climb our back fence. She did not resist arrest, but she kept asking the officers to tell me that she just wanted to be part of Luna's life. "She is my niece," she kept saying. "I have a right to see my niece." This time, the judge was not sympathetic to any mental health arguments. Violating a restraining order, especially after serving time for stalking the same victim, carried serious consequences. Stephanie was sentenced to 3 years in prison with no possibility of early release. The restraining order was extended for 10 years and would be reviewed again when Luna reached school age. As I watched the news coverage of Stephanie's second sentencing, I felt a complex mix of emotions. Relief that my family was safe, sadness for the woman who had once been like a sister to me, and anger at the years of anxiety and fear she had caused. But most of all, I felt grateful for the strength I had found to protect my daughter, and for the lesson that sometimes protecting those we love means making the hardest choices. Looking at Luna now happy and safe in her high chair, I realized that protecting those we love sometimes means making the hardest choices. Trust your instincts, set boundaries, and never let anyone convince you that your peace of mind is not worth fighting for. Have you ever had to cut ties with a family member for the sake of your own safety? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Please give this video a like if it resonated with you, and do not forget to subscribe for more real-life stories that matter. Share this with someone who might need to hear it, because sometimes knowing you are not alone makes all the difference. Thank you so much for listening to my story, and I hope it helps someone else recognize the warning signs before it is too late. Remember, your safety and your children's safety should always come first, no matter who the threat comes from.